This is the broadcast of Back Roads of Illinois. We are bringing latest agricultural news and markets update on Back Roads of Illinois. Bring you like inside of the markets and interview with people in the agricultural industry for farmers and ranchers in central Illinois and across the Midwest. Today's edition of Back Roads of Illinois. On today, we were Central Illinois agriculture source, and in the Midwest alongside in Central Illinois agriculture, we were glad you're here on a Tuesday. I'm Cesar Delgado. We were talking about the Farm Progress Show in Boone, Iowa for the last couple weeks ago with Mike Wilson. He is a senior executive director for the Farm Progress. We were joining with Mike on the show for today. We were talking about the fertilizer prices for right now with Middle East and the Mississippi River with Mike Castle from StoneX Financial for Fertilizer Division in Kansas City, Missouri. We were talking about the cattle markets for today's market with Brad Kooima from Kooima Kooima Evielk Trading in Sioux Center, Iowa. Finally, we were talking about the commodities markets with Chris Robinson from Robinson Marketing in Chicago. Otherwise, this is for your agricultural news and markets update on Back Roads of Illinois. This election season is underway in the U.S. Farmers is having some concerns about the Commonwealth of Agricultural Industry in Washington, D.C. Trump and Harris have been to put some tariffs again to China. A tropical storm is coming up to the Gulf of Mexico. Meteorologists will be keeping an eye on the topical for this week. The cattle on feed report was coming out on last Friday. It was 100. Or on the report from the Department of Agricultural. We were talking with Mike Wilson from the Farm Progress on here. Stay tuned on Back Roads of Illinois. We were talking about the Farm Progress Show in Boone, Iowa. Mike Wilson is a senior executive director of Farm Progress for today on Back Roads of Illinois on today. We were welcoming him on the show with us. How are you today?
Cesar, thank you for having me. I am doing very well. Thank you.
Let's start our conversation about the Farm Progress Show in Boone, Iowa. Could you tell our listeners how was it?
We had a very successful show in Boone, Iowa this year. We had very good crowds, partly I think because the show has become an icon for global agriculture, but obviously mostly in the Midwest, for people to see new technology and the latest equipment that's being launched. So people have sort of become, conditioned to know that they're going to see something new and different every time they come to the Farm Progress Show. And so this year was no different. We were very pleased to have good crowds and good weather. And you always have to have good weather if you can. And we were fortunate that way this year. So we're very happy about the show.
How many attended the show for this year?
You know, that's a piece of information that I have been asking for 25 years. And I am not privy to know what the answer is. I think there's a policy out there that says we're not going to make that information public, not just us, but I think generally speaking, most farm shows don't talk about actual attendance numbers. So I really don't know. The way we judge it, or at least I judge it, is informal. I look at the number of cars and trucks that are parked in the parking lot, and you look at the number of people who come in terms of how busy the streets are, and it was very busy. It was the parking lots were full, so I'm pretty sure we had a very good crowd by usual estimates. I'm certainly thinking we are back to pre-COVID attendance numbers. So I think that was a good indication that we're doing pretty well with the show.
Do you have heard about the harvest season in northern Illinois from people who are in northern Illinois?
Well, I don't get a chance to go to Northern Illinois as much as I used to. I grew up in Ogle County. It's a beautiful part of the world. I have been told that since July, we've had a bit of a dry spell. Crops still look good. We were back there in, I'd say, 3 weeks ago, and the crops look very good. I can tell you nationally, the corn prices were up a little bit last night. They're at $4.1375 per bushel for December corn. So I think you're also seeing continued good to excellent conditions in corn, which is probably why those corn prices are down, is with a four in front of them instead of a five. We probably have really good, mostly good crops all over the country, except for in southeast Ohio, where they are having a little bit of a drought. But I think northern Illinois is doing pretty well, despite taking a little bit of the top off the yields due to some dryness.
Mm, mm, mm.
I was in Grand Island for this year.
We had a great show at Husker Harvest Days in Grand Island. It was a new system for registration. We decided to offer free registration for people if they wanted to sign in and give us their registration data, and $25 at the gate if you did not do that. And we had a really big crowd. So we were very, very happy about our show at Grand Island. Also benefited from great weather again this year. And we're having a new focus on beef and irrigation technology, as well as the usual kinds of things that farmers look for at a regional, very large regional farm show. So we were very pleased about Husker this year.
Do you have any final thoughts or recap?
I would just say that farming is in a little bit of a downturn right now. That's because we have too many crops all over the world. That's a blessing. Obviously, we need to have food for everyone. But I think for grain farmers, it's the usual story of grain prices can go down like an elevator, but input prices go down like an escalator. In other words, input prices are slow to come down compared to grain prices when we have a downturn. So you have to be very mindful of your costs this coming year and find ways to manage your risk as well as your bottom line. We are trying to provide lots of great content and stories in our Farm Progress publications. So I hope that you will check those publications out if you get one. If you're a subscriber, we thank you for your subscription. And better days will come for agriculture, as they always do.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you, Caesar. Really appreciate it.
This is Mike Wilson from the farm. This is your morning markets update on back roads of Illinois. Corn futures are 3 to 5 cents up at the half. Soybean futures are 5 to 4 cents up quarter. Wheat futures are 8 to 9 cents U at the half. This is your livestock markets update sponsored by Kyle Bumstead from Allendale Incorporated. Cattle are up to 4 to 5 cents feeder. Cattle are up 7 to 8 cents at the half. Lean hogs are down to 7 to 6 cents quarter. Crude oil finished in up 2 to 3 cents. Dow Jones finished in up 10 points. This is your morning markets update on back roads of Illinois. We were going to talk about the livestock market for today on the show with Brad Kooima from Kooima Kooima Evielk Trading in Sioux Center, Iowa. How are things in Northwest Iowa?
Cesar, thanks for having me on. Things are good. We've had beautiful weather, getting a start on harvest. Got an awful lot of silage cut around here. Guys are starting on ground ear corn. Beans are just getting started. And the cash cattle market's had a nice little uptick here the last 3 or 4 weeks. So everything is going pretty well here in Northwest Iowa.
How are the Packers markets from Labor Day weekend? Could you tell our listeners about beef demand?
I'll certainly give it a try. Beef demand is always difficult to quantify, much more difficult than the supply side of the equation, but generally speaking, we've seen what has been quite common from a seasonal standpoint. We see a slowdown when we get about 10 days ahead of Labor Day in the middle meats. And what I mean by the middle meats is generally the steak cuts, the more expensive, the ribeyes, the strip steaks, the loin. As a consumer, they have the one last kind of like the last weekend of summer where there's a big grilling deal yet for Labor Day. And then after that, kids are back in school, schedules change, and maybe the budget constraints change a little bit too. We continue to see good demand for the grinding meat, hamburger, in other words, which might signal that a more budget conscious shopper might be driving the bus there. As far as global demand, though, export demand continues to be very high. So I'd say the demand is certainly adequate, nothing unusual for what we seasonally would typically see through that Labor Day period. The next move on the demand as we get closer to Christmas, we'll see an improvement then of that higher priced meat. At least that's typical of what we do as we start to feature the steak and the high end cuts as we get closer to the Christmas holidays.
How is the cash market in Upper Midwest?
Last week in particular, we saw a pretty sharp rise. We traded cattle late Friday as high as 185, which was 2 to 3 and even instances $4 higher than the week prior. And I'd say over the last 3 weeks or so, we've seen the market come back from basically that 180 level. So we got a little ways to go here, maybe wherever we want to be, but I think you see a little bit of a split effect between my neck of the woods, the north, Iowa, Nebraska, considered to be the north, where we continue to be relatively current here. Don't have any big cattle here as comparative to Texas, Kansas, where the average weights there are much above normal. So I guess I like to think that what's going on in the north is maybe more important than what goes on in the south, just because this is where most of the negotiation is done, Cesar. I think moving forward here, I don't see a burdensome supply of numbers. And I think we've got a bit of leverage because I think we're relatively current, at least up in this part of Iowa.
What happened to the conversation about the expansion from last year at this time?
I think that's a great question and a great conversation to try to have. I have to, throw a little bit of a chip here a little bit because I was I'm not over it, extremely disappointed when the USDA made the decision to not have the July inventory report. That's supposed to be a semi-annual report. In other words, every 6 months, you get one in January, you get one at the end of July, and gives us a count of total cows, beef cows, dairy cows, heifers kept for replacement, total steers. I mean, a real comprehensive report. They decided that they didn't have room in their budget to do it this year, which I think is baloney. So next month, when we get to the next quarterly cattle and feed report, we'll get a breakdown a little bit of how many steers got placed and how many heifers got placed. Might give us a little bit of a window on, are we starting to stop the liquidation phase that started 3 years ago with record cow kill for 2 straight years, and also record amount of heifers as a percentage of steers on feed last year and the year before, both set new records of how many heifers we had on feed. Will we see finally some retention of heifers as we take those females and turn them back into the herd and make cows out of them, and not have to feed so many of them? Of course, that's when the supply side gets the tightest, when that happens. So as I try to ask around and do some research on that, I'm not getting a clear answer, Caesar. Rather, I see that it depends on the region. I think that the traditional northern region that we would draw cattle out of, and I'm talking about the Dakotas, Montana, Wyoming, Colorado, I think that they're seeing some retention of heifers, that these guys are starting to rebuild. They get a lot of rain, so they've got a lot of grass, a lot of feed. Conversely, you go to like the South and the Southeast, especially the Southeast, when I talk out in that country, that I'm talking about the Virginias, Kentuckys, that sort of thing. Their conditions haven't been good, and I don't think that you've seen much retention. So I don't know. This has got a very, very long cycle of liquidation, the longest that I've seen. So I think you're still looking at generally tighter numbers and not a real willingness, although the cow kill has slowed way down this year, way down about 15% year on year. So we've slowed the cow kill, which would give you that other hint that maybe we're going to start to save a few heifers, but we'll see. This next 3 months will tell us a lot.
Can you explain about liquidation phase for this time?
For a lot of people, I think that liquidation phase decision was driven by a couple of things, weather, but more importantly than that, economics. Black swan, it's the COVID deal, it's the September 11, it's the mad cow disease, it's etc. It's a plant on fire. I mean, there's just a litany of things that have happened to us lately that can cause a problem. So I'd say, exercise a little caution, keep on top of some of your marketing, your skills. And the other thing, part of that, I think, is let's try to do our best to remain current. We had a big rally in 2014. We all got bulled up in 15, and we decided we were going to feed cattle to a fare thee well. We made them way too big, and we lost all our leverage. So this weight thing is something that I think we need to stay on top of. I would encourage us to try to stay current so we can maintain a little leverage and try to help make our own prices instead of just take whatever they'll give us.
Where people can find you for their risk management consulting services.
Probably the easiest place is to look us up at kkvtrading.com. That's our website, and you can get all the direction you need from there and how to get a hold of us from there.
Thanks, you.
Thank you. You're welcome.
This is Brad Kooima from Kooima Kooima Evielk Trading in Sioux Center, Iowa.
All right. Take care, Caesar.
Thanks to Brad Kooima from Kooima Kooima Evielk Trading in Sioux Center, Iowa. We were talking about the commodities markets with Chris Robinson from Robinson Marketing. How is the corn market for this morning?
Well, we've had a good surprise, a good
rally in the soybeans, which has helped corn go back up, but we were starting to leak a little bit. We did hit 418, which was a new high for the move. The big story was soybeans. Soybeans, since their contract low, rallied an entire dollar, actually $1.02. Just a great rally, great opportunity. 3-4 weeks ago, we were at 9.55. People were very concerned that we were going to go below $9, and here we are. We hit 10.58. If you do the math, 9.55 minus 10.58, that's $1.03. That's a good recovery, and it has helped corn slightly. But corn is, again, it's kind of under pressure here. We're not seeing a whole lot of follow through. We may have seen our big move before the USDA report, which is on the 30th. We have a small grains report. Today's the 24th. And that's what this feels like to me. There's some stories, two things driving us, Caesar. Number one, some stories about being too dry in South America. Number one. Number two, probably the bigger one, is that China cut its interest rates. They're trying to turn their economy around. So it's they are printing money, and it's put a lot of money back into their pockets. And I think that's the biggest reason soybeans have rallied. That's because Chinese authorities changed their monetary policy. They're trying to get more money to help their economy recover. Their economy has been in the doldrums here for the past 6 months.
How about the wheat markets?
We just had a nice rally off the bottom again, but it's kind of like in the same boat with corn. It's having trouble holding a significant rally. I'm looking at the December wheat market here. The contract level was 521. Last week, we could not get above $6. Right now, we could not maintain a trade above 588. But I'm a glass half full person. So if you look at where we're trading right now, 575, that's 55 cents higher than where we were on our lows. This is coming, as harvest is pretty much done. People are starting to harvest soybeans and getting ready to harvest corn. I think it's a rally that producers should use to catch up on sales, and also to if they're going to store grain, right? If you're going to store grain, and when we rally 50, 60 cents, it makes our defensive puts a lot cheaper. So you can get cheaper downside insurance. I would use this rally in wheat for that purpose.
Chris, how is the soy
break? That is a gift to producers. That's something I think a producer should look to try to take advantage of.
How is the beans carry out for Brazil and Argentina for China?
Pretty good. I mean, the Brazilian crop and the Argentina crop are going to be not exactly records, maybe a little bit less than a record, but still a very, very big crop. And this is at the time of the year where they will be shifting from the U.S. towards getting more soybeans from South America. The Chinese depend quite a bit on the South American markets. They've made a large investment down there to try to help with infrastructure. But I would not describe the supply situation as tight. There's plenty of beans. The Chinese know that, and it's reflected in the price of soybeans. You got to remember, we were, we've had a nice rally, but we were just at 4-year lows.
Is there anything would you like to tell our listeners about the livestock markets, especially in the defer?
The deferred, we've had a good recovery. Part of the reason we've had a recovery after kind of a rocky road here recently, we're at 3-4 month highs in cattle. A lot of that's been driven because the stock market again, because of our monetary policy, the stock market is at all-time highs. The Dow Jones is closing in on 43,000. It hit 42,650. The S&P is closing in on 6,000. That is always good for the cattle market. The cattle on feed report we had was really a kind of a non-event, but cattle, continues to be near, we've had a very good 4-year rally in cattle. I think this rally here has been fueled by the bounce back in the stock market. It's a great opportunity for producers. I think the one thing I really want to talk about, though, is lean hogs. After just getting destroyed earlier in the year, lean hogs are at 4-month, 5-month high. So lean hogs are giving producers a great opportunity here, in my opinion.
Do you have any final thoughts or recap?
Well, yeah, I would say, we've been given a gift here, especially in the soybeans, a nice rally. Not the rally that we wanted in D's corn, but when soybeans rally $1, and it just happened really. Friday, soybeans were at 10.01. This morning we hit 10.58. So in 3 days to gain nearly 60 cents, that is a gift to producers. Take advantage of it, please. I'm not calling a top. I hope it goes higher, but $1 rally needs to be taken advantage of, in my opinion, by producers. So get after it. We've got a USDA report on the 30th. It's harvest. I know a lot of people don't want to think about harvest now because don't want to think about marketing because they are in the middle of harvest. But when you get $1 rally off the lows in soybeans, that is a wake-up call for anybody that grows soybeans.
Where people can find you for their risk management consulting services.
Yep. RobinsonAgMarketing.com. Give me a call. Love to talk with you. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Chris. This is Chris Robinson from Robinson Marketing in Chicago on back roads of Illinois.
Thank you.
This is close bell numbers of the commodity markets from Kyle Bumstead from Allendale Inc. November feeder cattle plus dollar. 650 closing at $243.400. December live cattle plus dollar. 575 closing at $184.400. December lean hogs plus dollar. 100 closing at $74.975. December corn -1 single quote 6 closing at $4.11 single quote 6. November soybeans +3 single quote 0 closing at $10.42 single quote 2. December Chicago wheat -4 single quote 4 closing at $5.78 single quote 0. December KC wheat -6 single quote 2 closing at $5.71 single quote 0. Closing quotes provided by Kyle R. Bumstead Branch Office Manager Erickson, Nebraska Allendale, Inc. Thanks to all of our guests on today's program. We're running out of time on our show, but you can listen to our show on YouTube. And whenever you get your podcast that's been back roads of Illinois. I am Cesar Delgado. Have a good day.